Hello, everyone. Logan Hertz here with Hazeltine LLC. I thought it was time for another health update. Things continue to be challenging. I don't particularly like doing these health updates, but I think it is helpful for the audience because unfortunately, I know a lot of people who are going through similar things. No one's situation is ever quite the same. If you say you understand what someone else is going through, you are a liar and you are being presumptuous. For each of us, our experience is unique. But I do think there are people who certainly can sympathize with what I'm going through because unfortunately, I hear a lot of similar stories. It seems like everybody knows someone in one of their circles who has had health challenges and who not only can see how difficult that can make your life, but also the challenge of navigating the medical system, which is a whole nother challenge that you're introduced to at the worst possible time when you're in a very vulnerable psychological and physical state and you're in no position to deal with it. So I try to talk about that too, to try to give some practical advice to people and to tie it in some way to the main subject of my channel and my business, which is to help people with their finances because healthcare, finding good healthcare, paying for health insurance, or hopefully you're not doing health insurance and doing some alternatives, but overall finding a way to best pay for healthcare can make a big difference in your finances if you're able to find efficient ways to pay for healthcare and get good quality healthcare versus if you are not. So I've started two very challenging forms of very specialized physical therapy with different therapists because both of these forms of physical therapy I had tried in some form or fashion in the past with mixed results. And I'm now doing them again with two different therapists who seem to be better and more qualified. They are further away, so there's a significant inconvenience in terms of time and hassle to get there. But I just went to my first in-person physical therapy session with an extremely painful, uncomfortable form of physical therapy, but which could maybe help. And after my first session, it was definitely very painful, hard to tolerate. But it does seem that this therapist is much better than the previous therapist. And what's interesting is I wanted to bring up something that I think will be very helpful for the audience. I've talked in the past about how there are doctors who won't take insurance, they will only take cash. And by going to those doctors, you can oftentimes get better care. And certainly you at least don't have to deal with the same bureaucracy and perverse financial incentives that you normally have to deal with, where the insurance company is standing between you and the doctor. And the doctor's decisions are based more on what the insurance company tells them to do rather than what is in the best interest of the patient. So by paying the doctor directly in cash, you eliminate all of that and the psychological burden associated with it. But you can get the best of both worlds. So with these particular therapists, you pay them in cash immediately upfront. So that means the doctor's happy because the doctor or the therapist got paid in cash up front. There's no bureaucrat standing between you and the doctor. You don't have to wait. You get seen on time. The doctor waits for you, not the other way around. And they spend quality time with you. And you pay them in cash. But then they give you what they call a super bill, an itemized bill that you can file with your insurance carrier. So you can potentially get the best of both worlds where you're paying in cash, but yet you're still getting reimbursed on the back end by the insurance company. And so far, I've had no problems getting reimbursed by the insurance company because the doctor does a good job of providing you with the right documentation to get paid by the insurance company. And I've actually done this before. So I have both health insurance and crowd health. And there are reasons why I have both. Typically, most people are going to have one or the other, but each solution is personal. In the past, I'd been dealing with sleep issues and I was diagnosed with sleep apnea, which may or may not have been the correct diagnosis, but I was going to try a BiPAP machine rather than a CPAP machine. No sleep doctor ever explained to me that there are different forms of CPAP machines. I found this all out on my own through my own research. And I determined that a BiPAP machine would probably be better for me than a CPAP machine. And basically talking to the doctor and trying to get him to order one, it turns out there was a shortage of CPAP machines and there was weeks of wait and all this other stuff, because when you have a monopoly or a cartel organization and you want to control the market, the first thing you have to do is restrict the supply. This is why they have, as an example, prescriptions. The reason why a doctor has to write you a prescription before you can get a drug is not because they want to protect the patient from dangerous drugs. That's ridiculous. Obviously, they do not. It's because they want to control the supply of drugs. Because we know from the British Opium Wars and long swath of history that when you control the flow of drugs into a country, you make yourself very powerful and you make people dependent upon those drugs. And now you quite literally have the power of life and death over those people when you can control whether or not they get access to life-saving drugs. I have a client whose father-in-law was killed by the medical cartel because the doctor refused to write him a prescription for the drug that he needed. This client happened to be an attorney. He filed an injunction in court, was able to get access to the drug, but by the time he did, it was too late and his father-in-law died. Of course, that doctor will not be thrown in jail for his murder of my client's father-in-law, nor can he be held liable in any way because he's following the rules that have been set in place by the powers that be. So the reason why they have these government bureaucracies, the regulations, of course, is not to protect the patient. It's to make sure that these elements of healthcare are centrally managed and centrally controlled. If they were not centrally controlled, at least the patient would have the ability to get access to what he thinks is going to help him, whether his judgment is correct or not, because doctors are not infallible either. Oftentimes, the patients know more than the doctors about their own situation, and the doctors, of course, aren't always working in the patient's best interest. And I know I'm rambling quite a bit, but the point that I'm making is you can pay your doctor in cash and then get reimbursed on the back end. So I mentioned there was a shortage of CPAP machines. If I had gone through insurance through the standard channels, I would have had to wait weeks to get the machine I was looking for. So what I did instead was I went out to, I don't think it was Amazon. It may have been Amazon or a specialty CPAP store where I bought the BiPAP machine and paid for it in cash. So I got it today. Maybe a day or two later, it got shipped, but I got it very quickly. I didn't have to wait. And then I filed a claim with the insurance company and I got reimbursed by the insurance company on the back end. They did cover it. So you can get the best of both worlds. If you work with doctors who take cash, oftentimes those doctors are extremely helpful in terms of managing the insurance bureaucracy. Notice when you go to your standard doctor's office, the bureaucrats at the front office who are supposed to be helping you navigate the insurance company's bureaucracy do the opposite. They just block you. And 9 times out of 10, they give you the wrong answer and they do not help you. There's a big difference between a bureaucrat who blocks you and runs interference for the doctor versus someone who helps you to navigate the bureaucracy. When I was in telecom, the government affairs people at the telecom company, they were not bureaucrats. They worked in the bureaucracy, but they were not bureaucrats. They actually helped you to navigate the bureaucracy. They would explain to you, if you want to get this LTE carrier in place, you want to get this cell phone tower up, here are the hoops you have to jump through. And we don't like it. It is what it is. And now let me help you dot those I's and cross those T's and get it done. This particular doctor has a whole page on her website and forms about here for this particular insurance carrier. Here's how it typically works. For this particular insurance carrier, here's how they typically cover it. Here's how it typically works, educating you on these things that no insurance company will ever educate you on and no doctor's office will ever educate you on. Despite the fact that insurance is not covering it up front, you actually, it seems to me, have a better understanding of how things actually work with doctors like that. So I've had more than one doctor where I pay up front in cash, but then they give you the paperwork to file with your insurance carrier and they help you get it approved. They never promise anything, of course, because they don't want to deal with the insurance company. They certainly do not answer for the insurance company. But the doctor's office doesn't help you with any of this. The bureaucrats at the doctor's office, your typical doctor's office, they do not explain to you how the insurance company works. They just block you. And if they ever do any explanation, it makes no sense. They have no sympathy for you. They're not trying to help you get it covered. They're just telling you no. And you deal with it. You figure it out. Good luck. So that was an interesting, it wasn't a recent revelation, but something I thought was helpful sharing. So it's not necessarily either you pay cash or you get it covered by insurance. You could potentially have the best of both worlds where you go to a doctor who only takes cash, so you have a much better direct relationship with the doctor. And then when that doctor gives you the super bill, you take that, file it with the insurance carrier, and get reimbursed. And it's actually pretty easy. So far, it's been a smooth process for me. I log into the insurance company's website. I use Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield. There's an online claim center. I just upload the PDF that the doctor gives me, and their website scans and reads off the CPT codes and everything that it needs, and I can submit it. It's simple and straightforward if the doctor is willing to give you that information. If not, you might have to do more legwork yourself, but you still can potentially get those cash costs reimbursed. Now, of course, the drawback is you are now paying those insurance premiums, whether directly yourself out of pocket or indirectly if your employer is paying for them. So obviously there's that, but I thought that was an interesting option. I'll just say these two forms of physical therapy that I'm undergoing are very challenging, and it's very difficult to get motivated and find the mental and physical energy to do what's required. Because not only is it very challenging, it's not like I have a huge amount of confidence that this is going to work. I still feel like the doctors who refer me to this physical therapist are just trying to find another box to check. So when I went to the Mayo Clinic, yes, they're a little better than your standard doctor, but they're still part of the standard system. What I found is they're still there to check boxes, but it's just a different box that they check, is really all that it is. So when I went to the Mayo Clinic, they did not review any of my records ahead of time. People are traveling long distances to be there, and they cannot even be bothered to review your file ahead of time. And so when you meet with the doctor, that's the first time he's ever seen you or has seen anything about you. And so you give him your records, but he's not really looking through them in detail. He's not really sitting down and thinking about it. He's certainly not doing research. It's just a quick once over, put a check in the box and get rid of you. It's a different box that they're checking, but that's about it. So I did not find the Mayo Clinic to be very helpful. It was worth trying, of course, and I will continue to communicate with them through their patient portal just in case there's any more value I can glean from that. But in fairness, I did find a therapist who I think is better at this very painful form of therapy that could actually work. So I'll be doing it once a week. Also, as an aside for what it's worth, I had some other interesting medical experiences now with my father, who got into a serious bike accident, and I happened to be there on the scene. Thankfully, he's going to make a full recovery. That's the good news. He's expected to make a full recovery, but he broke 7 ribs and his clavicle, and he's in pretty rough shape. He's still in the hospital. They recently moved him out of the ICU. He did not need to get surgery, but he was in a lot of pain, and he's fairly weak and not able to move a whole lot. It's very difficult for him to get up, difficult for him to walk around. He needs assistance doing just about anything. So they will probably, over the next few days, be moving him into a rehabilitation center where he will be for probably at least 2 weeks. Breaking that many ribs is a big deal for anyone, but particularly when you're at an advanced age, it can be life-threatening. And the rescue squad was actually very prompt. I was shocked by how quickly they showed up. Thankfully, it was probably less than 10 minutes from when I called them to when the ambulance arrived. So that was good. And he's in rough shape, but I visited him in the hospital a couple times, but thankfully he should make a full recovery. If anyone knows about broken ribs, that can be a very painful injury. And I'm sure the therapy and rehabilitation is going to be involved and not fun, but he should make a full recovery. I'm guessing it'll be about weeks before he's back to somewhat normal activities, probably more than that before he's back to completely normal. But I wanted to also throw in too, I was just thinking about this. I'm actually very optimistic as a person because, and this will sound pretentious and self-righteous, but at the end of the day, I trust divine providence. I do believe in divine providence. Everything we suffer for a reason. And this life ends. The next life is where our true home is, not in this life. So it's good for us to suffer. Otherwise, we would get too attached to this life and get too comfortable and complacent in this life when this is not what we're supposed to be focused on. Even in the healthcare system, there are lots of positive things that I see, honestly. The technology has increased dramatically. When you look at surgical techniques, they've gotten extremely advanced, especially when you look at sports medicine. Tearing an ACL used to be a career-ending injury. If you were an athlete and you tore your ACL, you could recover and you could walk again and be relatively normal, but you'd never be an athlete at that level again. Your career was over. Now, with all the advanced surgical techniques they have, you can come back from that. Adrian Peterson tore 3 of the 4 ligaments in his knee. He would have been done 3 times over. And he came back and was MVP. That's amazing. Not only have there been advances in technology, there are also alternatives, which to me is the silver lining. Because the system is so corrupt and more people are starting to recognize it, there are now more and more alternatives outside of the system opening up, where, as an example, doctors are accepting only cash. Doctors are opting out of the system. There's primary care physicians who now do concierge medicine, direct primary care. There are alternatives to health insurance like crowd health and health sharing that are helping in many ways. So while I am quick to call out the evildoers, and I will never make excuses for them, and I will never have a naive view of the healthcare system, and I'm not viewing medical professionals as Mother Teresa's, I'm still optimistic, and I want to help give people practical guidance, because no matter how bad the system is, there's always a practical way to navigate it as best you can. Again, more random thoughts. I know I'm rambling here, but that's what this is. A bit of catharsis for me. I don't know if it's helpful for the audience. If you think this is not helpful, please tell me, because I'm really just rambling at this point. But I was talking to a colleague of mine who has done a lot of disability insurance and works a lot with doctors, because doctors are some of the prime candidates for disability income insurance. I will give doctors and medical professionals credit. They understand the importance of disability income insurance, and they have it, typically very robust coverage, and that is excellent. They are very good for doing that. I commend them, because that's a gap in a lot of people's financial plans that most people have never thought about. They know they need homeowners insurance. They know they need car insurance. They've never thought about disability income insurance. But when you think about it, your most valuable asset is not your car or your house. It's your ability to generate income. And you protect that ability to generate income by having life insurance and disability income insurance, because death or disability could eliminate, at least for a time, your ability to generate income. But what you said about doctors is they have a God complex. They have a God complex. And I agree with them. A lot of medical professionals, they have a God complex. One of them said, with all the self-righteousness and preachiness you can imagine, said, I save lives. That's what we do. We save lives. Well, if that's not a God complex, then I don't know what is, because your lifeguard at the pool, that's what he does. There are lots of people out there who could reasonably say that their profession is to save lives. My profession takes care of widows and orphans. That's a very noble thing to do. But hopefully we don't have a God complex or become self-righteous Pharisees because our profession happens to be a good one that adds value. All professions add value to society in some form or fashion. And so if you make $750,000 a year working as an overpaid bureaucrat for the insurance carrier, and as a result of your actions, people's health is improved, people's lives are saved, that's great. But that doesn't make you Mother Teresa. Your reward is not virtue in heaven. Your reward is the $750,000 a year you're making, and that's fine. I don't expect doctors to be Mother Teresa. That's not realistic. I do expect them to be professionals. And by and large, they're not professionals. They behave like self-absorbed adolescents. And this is the real crux of the matter. All of the bureaucracy and all of the narcissism I see from doctors would be manageable if they actually fixed my problem. So if you are an incredibly intelligent doctor and you do a really good job, then I'm okay with you being a little bit arrogant. That's fine. I'm okay if you lecture me a little bit. I'm okay if I have to navigate through some bureaucrats. If at the end of the day, you solve my health problems, I have no problem with any of it. The challenge is you have to deal with all that, and then they don't fix your health problems, or maybe they even make your health problems worse. That's what makes the system truly unbearable, is when they don't actually help you. In some cases, they do. I think surgical procedures can be very helpful. I think there are certain areas where modern medicine is very good, and there are certain areas where it's not so good. And in all of those areas, you see perverse financial incentives that create entrenched bureaucracies that you now have to navigate. But in my line of work and in every line of work, I oftentimes have to hold my nose and do business with people I don't particularly like. But as long as they're fulfilling their function and they're adding value to me and to my clients, I'm okay with it. I can do that. We don't have to be friends. We could just be business associates. That's fine. The challenge I have with many of the modern medical so-called professionals is that after all of their attitude, they still don't help me. And they make obscene amounts of money for not helping me and prolonging my suffering. And that's where I have the challenge. But again, I'm still trying to keep a positive outlook on life while I'm still realistic. And I know I'm getting very pretentious and philosophical. So if you want to call me self-righteous and pretentious, that's fine. That's fine. I'll just say I've earned the right to vent and rant a little bit when I've been through many of the challenges that I have. I hope this is helpful for the audience, because I know there are people out there also suffering with the medical system and also suffering with chronic, undiagnosed conditions for years, where everything remains very mysterious, and you go to all these different specialists and people both inside and outside of the conventional medical system, and you don't seem to be able to get any answers. And that's one of the most difficult things about it, is that you have no answers. If you're diagnosed with cancer, that's very scary, but at least you know what you have. In my case, nobody really knows what I have. But the optimistic note I'll leave people with is that over time, I have found some excellent, very good medical professionals. They are out there. Some of them are in the conventional system doing their best to navigate it for their patients and really going out of the way to try to help their patients. And some of them exist outside of the conventional system, where because they want to help their patients more, they've checked out of the medical system. Maybe they're MDs, maybe they're in an alternative position, but either way, they're doing their best to try and help their patients. And it takes some time to find them, but they are out there. And those people I commend, who are actually doing what medical professionals are supposed to do, which is to serve the patients, to serve the patients. And I know I said I was going to end, but I'm still rambling. So let me point this out. If you say you want to help someone, you are being condescending and insulting to the person you are trying to help. Because if you say, I want to help someone, you are looking down on the person that you are helping, because you're saying, I'm the superior, and this poor little helpless soul I'm going to help is the inferior. So I'm Mother Teresa, and you are the person lying on the bed that I'm going to help. But you know what takes a lot more virtue than masquerading as Mother Teresa? Is being the helpless person on the bed. That is a much more humbling position to be in, like Saint Lidwina and others, to be in a position where you are dependent on others, where you are helpless. I've been in that position. It's a very humbling position to be in, and it's much easier to grow in virtue when you're in that position than when you're in the position of playing Mother Teresa. Because I get this a lot. I get people who want to give me suggestions. They want to give me suggestions. In other words, they want to bark orders at me. They say they want to help me. Well, I didn't ask you for a suggestion, did I? Did I ask you for a suggestion? No, I did not. You don't know my medical situation, and I'm not going to explain it to you because that's my personal business and you have no right to know about it. I will reveal that only to the people I choose to reveal it to. And I've had enough of talking to people who are not listening that I can only handle so much of it. So the vast majority of people who say that they want to help me are really just self-righteous Pharisees who want to virtue signal at my expense. What they want to do is take advantage of people who are in weak, vulnerable positions, people who are suffering like me, and give me a condescending pat on the head or a pat, worthless solution that I did not ask for, and then saunter off in smug self-satisfaction as if they've done a good deed. I have people like this in my own family. I have people like this that I've come across. If you want to help someone, you are a Pharisee. Stop helping people. What you should instead seek to do is to serve other people. To serve other people. So you have to let them tell you how they want to be served. And most of the time, what they actually want is for you to get out of their life and get out of their way. And you have to respect that. You have to respect their wishes. Because what these people will do is when they try to help me, they offer me something. And when I say no, they get angry. So it wasn't really an offer of help, was it? Otherwise, you wouldn't get angry when I say no. When I say no, you would respect the fact that I said no, and you would be genuinely interested. Oh, why did you say no? Why was that not helpful? How can I be helpful? But these are questions they never bring up. They want to not listen to me and just give me a condescending pat on the head and a pat, insultingly simplistic solution that I did not ask for. Instead of actually listening and trying to, first of all, figure out what is actually going wrong. Nobody wants to do that. Everybody wants to jump straight to a condescending pat on the head solution. Well, if you haven't precisely identified the problem, if you have no real diagnosis, how can you possibly give a solution? You cannot. You cannot. So I don't ever tell people, I know what you're going through. I don't ever make suggestions for people unless they ask me for them. Unless they ask me for them. What I do is I try to listen. To listen. I had a friend of mine who has been dealing with sleep issues, and he was telling me about them. And I said, unfortunately, I've learned a lot about this. I've had my own sleep issues. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about what you've been dealing with, if you're open to it? So I'm not prying. I'm just inviting him to tell me more. I didn't jump straight to a condescending pat on the head solution. I didn't pretend like I knew what he was going through. Okay. And I invited him to tell me more. And then I listened, something that nobody ever does. Everybody thinks they listen, but they don't. And I listened and I let him finish. And after listening, it was very clear to me that his sleep issues were completely different from mine. Completely different. And so I said, well, it sounds like what you're dealing with is completely different from me. But let me just tell you what I've learned. It will work for me. It's not the same as you. I know I'm not saying this is going to work for you, but I don't know what's going to work for you. So let me just tell you what will work for me. So I'm not making a suggestion. I'm not telling him what to do. I'm not pretending I understand his situation or have diagnosed him at all. I'm just telling you, hey, for what it's worth, here's what I've learned. Maybe it'll be helpful to you. Maybe it won't be. But for what it's worth, here's what I've learned. And here's what helped me. I know your situation is a little bit different, but take it for what it's worth. And that's not condescending or insulting. I'm recognizing in all humility that I cannot really help this person because I'm dealing with something different for him, but maybe some of this information will be helpful. So long rambling discussion of giving you an update on my health. And I guess the message is stop trying to help people. That's condescending and insulting to those people. Instead, try to serve those people, which is going to require you swallowing your pride, getting rid of your ego, and letting that other person be the one in charge. Not you. Not you. If you genuinely want to serve someone, you have to let them be in charge and let them tell you what is actually going to be beneficial for them. And the reason why they haven't told you is because they can see you are not receptive. You are not receptive. You're going to say, hey, do you want peas or do you want carrots? And they're going to say, well, I would like steak. No. Do you want peas or carrots? Steak is not on the menu. and you never listen. You do not listen. You do not listen. You want to jump straight to a condescending pat on that solution. You want to do something for them. Well, back up. Did they ask you to do something for them? Why don't you sit back, shut your mouth, and listen, and actually let that person finish? Really listen, because listening is hard. Listening is really hard. You have to look up to that person. You have to fix your attitude, lose the Pharisaical hypocrisy, view that person as being superior to you. Because when I see other people suffering, I don't look down on them at all. I look up to them, because suffering is hard. And if you're someone who's dealing with suffering, I look up to you because I respect the fact that you're able to sustain that level of suffering. And you're doing something that is difficult. It's difficult. It's very easy to virtue signal. It's very easy to virtue signal when you're perfectly healthy and the other person is not. It's very easy for you to help them and then pat yourself on the back for your good deed. It's much more difficult to just suffer. That's much more difficult. So stop being a Pharisee. Stop lecturing people. Stop giving condescending solutions nobody asked for. Instead, seek to put yourself in the position of the inferior and serve the person. So I hope that was helpful. Probably not. But let me know. We'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.